In boardrooms across the world, algorithms are already making calls that used to keep leaders awake at night. Credit approvals, fraud flags, hiring shortlists, dynamic pricing, cyber alerts, decision triggered in milliseconds at a scale no human team can match. Yet, when machine's decision harms a customer, breaks a regulation, or erodes trust, it's not algorithm. This is summoned to the board. It's the leader. The question is no longer if a machine will decide, but how the leader will stay accountable when they do. Before we get into the topic, let's have a small video about power of knowing. Our guest today sits exactly at the intersection. Dr. Nitin Saini is a LinkedIn top voice in strategy, a social entrepreneur, agile coach, and a global DBA with a rare combination of academic depth and real world execution. He has worked with leaders who are deploying AI at scale with its strategy, ethical and societal consequences. His lens naturally spans on our four pillars, that is technology, cyberspace, strategy, and growth. Let's welcome Dr. Nitin to the Power of Knowing Forums platform, and let's begin the topic. Hi, sir. Welcome to our podcast. Good evening.
Good
How
evening,
are you?
Prem. Thank you for having me.
Sir, a small intro about your journey so far, sir.
Yeah, see, I started my career with TCS as an engineer, and then I have moved up the value chain by uh, taking up the higher roles. And today I am the lead for the strategy and special initiatives for the government business in India. And in this journey of 24 years with TCS, and this is my first company, by the way, I didn't make a switch. And in these 24 years, I have got the opportunity to work in almost all the verticals, be it banking, be it telecom, be it manufacturing, be it retail. So currently, I'm focusing on public services India, and it has been a fantastic journey so far, especially now when the government is focusing on having the AI with the vision to become the AI hub for the world. I see the transformation that's happening, and it's truly an thrilling experience, witnessing this and being part of that journey. So thank you so much. I can't hear you,
Sir, I
Prem.
think it's
Yeah.
a very long stint that you have been with Wipro, starting as an engineer to the stage that you are today, and it's a great journey, I believe. So that's what I understand. Great to hear that. Now, coming to our point, when machines are deciding at scale, how should leaders redefine decision making really means?
Okay. See, we are at the point where AI is now becoming the part of our life,
Hmm.
right? Now, if I talk about the corporate world or the private sector where AI is being used in the businesses, now in this AI era, decision making is no longer about who clicks the button,
Hmm.
right? It's about who defines the intent, the constraints, and the accountability behind that click. That is the base of the accountability that we are talking about. Now, if we talk in the Indian context, the Indian enterprises and the public institutions, we are already seeing algorithms that are deciding at scale. If we talk about the banks and the fintechs, they're using it for the credit scoring and the loan approvals. If we talk about the payment systems, it's about the fraud detection, risk flagging, and all other things. Be it the IT and the services firm, especially the large ones, they are, doing the automated hiring, shortlisting of the appropriate candidates. And cybersecurity anyway is there. Anyhow, it is helping, trigger the automated containment actions to know what exactly is happening. With AI, cybersecurity again becomes a rider. Now, the leader's role has now shifted from decision executor to the decision architect, right? That's the fundamental thing. Now, machines decide very fast, whereas leaders must decide why, when, and within what boundaries the decisions have to be made. Now, if a CXO believes that the decision making ends with the AI model going live, that is not a delegation, that is abdication, right? Now, the AI is executing the decisions, but leaders always remain accountable for the outcomes. That is the crux. Leader cannot get away from the outcomes that are generating from the AI, be it the AI algorithm, AI models, whatever be it.
Got it. Where do you draw the boundary between delegation and abduction of leadership response? Because you were saying abduction when you
Yeah.
say it is there. So, how do we look at that?
See, the boundary is crossed when a moment a leader cannot explain. If a leader cannot explain why a decision has been made, or it cannot explain what data influenced it, or who approved its deployment, or how it can be overridden, then it is simply not the delegation but the abdication. Now, India regulators are, becoming very explicit about this. One cannot get away from any of these things. If we talk specifically, look at RBI. RBI has repeatedly clarified, especially through their digital lending guidelines, DLGs. 2022 and 2023 was the start of these guidelines. And they are saying if the fintech is using a third party algorithm, right, the regulated entity, be it the bank, be it the NBFC, they still remain fully accountable for the customer impact, any of the data usage, any of the fairness for the customers. Now, what this means is you cannot blame the model anytime anything goes wrong. You cannot hide behind the vendor and put the blame on to somebody else. You cannot outsource that responsibility. Now, let's see what's the fine difference between delegation and abdication. Now, if we talk about delegation, AI is assisting within a defined governance framework. Whereas when we talk about abdication, then AI is operating without explainability, without escalation, and without human override. And that is a very dangerous situation when delegation is not there and abdication is there. So, in short, if you cannot defend the decision in front of the regulator, a court, or the media, you have already crossed that line.
Got it, sir. I think what you are saying is when you cannot explain it, it's the end of story that you are going to say that it is not in your boundary, it is crossed the boundary, right? That's
Yes.
what you're saying. Can we share a moment where a leader tried to blame the algorithm and why that dangerous predicted precedent, sir? Any idea on that or any
Yeah.
thoughts around it?
Yeah. See, BFSI and the tech organizations are the early adopters of the newer technologies, including AI.
Hmm.
Now, in multiple Indian BFSI or the tech organizations, when the customers are wrongly denied credit, and we have seen this in the past, when the accounts are flagged or frozen, again, we have witnessed this in the past, or if the employees questioned the biased hiring filters, and we saw this
Hmm.
approach globally as well, right? So the first response often comes as this is what the system recommended. Now that defense never survives the scrutiny.
Hmm.
And this is very, very dangerous. Why it is dangerous? Because regulators are going to ask who approved the model.
Okay.
Court is going to ask who benefited from this automation, and the media will be asking who failed to foresee that item. And if you don't have the answer, it's a disaster in itself. Now we have seen this pattern, especially in the credit scoring disputes, where MSMEs or the startups, they do not get the credit. So a lot of false negatives are there. Then we have seen this in the automated KYCs, facial recognition errors. We have also seen the service denials because of some algorithm. So algorithm driven service denials are there. In each of those cases, the inquiry stops at the human authority and not the code base, right? Now, AI can click the button, but only the leaders will sit in front of the inquiry panel. We have to understand this. Ultimately, a human is accountable, whatever be the machines be doing.
Got it, sir. Now, what we are saying is examples of AI misfire can lead to regulations and security, reputation loss, or legal action. Now, how regulations are insisted that accountable person is still a human is what we are trying to say. And in that pattern, we are saying whether you build a model or not, you use it automated or not, somebody should be held responsible, and that should be a human, right? That's what we are
Absolutely,
saying,
absolutely. Yeah.
right?
So
Okay.
let me give you one quick example. In a very recent past few days back, I was driving with my friend,
Mhm.
and we were finding the directions over Google Maps, right? And it shows me that I have to take a right, whereas I don't see a right there, right? It is showing me a direction where I cannot go. And we have seen this in other cases as well, where the directions were shown incorrect and it led to some mishaps. Now, if we were to look at this, I cannot put a blame on Google Maps that Google Maps showed me a wrong thing. Certainly, somebody is responsible for this incorrect directions. And it has to be a human, because ultimately all of these systems have been made by some or the other human. Whether it was the developer, whether it was the manager, whether it was the board member, was it CXO, somebody has to be accountable for any of the things that are going wrong, especially when it is affecting the citizen, their experience, denial of rights, and all other things. It becomes very, very critical.
Very true, sir. Because I was part of the street view of Google where we collected data, and we were we were told that even incorrect data would not be uploaded to the this one. And somebody used to look at every map that we captured, and they used to say this map is wrong. This is a deviation there. You see, it is not taken right, so you need to take. So I understand what you are saying when we were working on the street view map. For Google, this one across 140 countries. So I was privileged to be part of that Maps project when I was part of
Mm.
Wipro. So it was a true defining point where how you can give the driving experience to the user. Now, what does a practical governance framework for AI driven decisions look like at the board and the CXO level, sir?
Okay. See, the AI governance framework does not sit outside the existing governance frameworks, right? It is actually an overlay. It's an upgrade on how the boards are already governing the risks, how they are governing the audit and compliance, and how they are governing the strategy. Now, in Indian organizations, we have seen the boards are already governing the financial risk, they are already governing the cybersecurity risk, the regulatory compliance, reputation, trust, and whatnot. Now, AI simply cuts across all of them simultaneously. So, see it as a horizontal cutting across all of these verticals. So, the right question for the board is not do we need a AI committee, but it is where does AI materially change our existing risk assumptions? Right, we make a lot of risk assumptions and make the decisions accordingly. We have to see where AI is actually making a significant change, especially when it is touching customers, right? Now in practice, the AI governance should be embedded into your risk registers, your RACI matrices, internal controls, audit trails, board dashboards, where not. Now if you look at the risk registers, AI as an operational, cyber, and reputational risk should be registered. In RACI matrices, clearly human accountability for the machine decisions have to be included. In the internal controls and the audit trails, the model decisions must be traceable. And into your board dashboards, the AI exposure and not just AI performance has to be included, right? Now, this is then called the governance maturity and not the bureaucracy. It is a inevitable thing as we adopt AI. All of these things get baked in. So governance has to be an overlay onto the existing governance frameworks. That's what I would say.
So what you are saying is there is no separate governance that is there when you talk about AI. See, the governance still remains same, and AI becomes a part of it, right, sir?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Now,
It
how
becomes one
can
of the risks to you.
okay. Now, how can the boards integrate AI oversight into existing risk audit and compliance committees without creating another silo? Because we are trying to bring all the silos to the center stage where you don't need a silos to be there because it gives a lot of confusion there. Now,
Mm,
how do we make this look at when you are bringing it to boards?
okay. Let's go back in time. Let's think about the time 10 years back, when cybersecurity was in the nascent stages. How did the board handle cybersecurity at that time is the same way AI has to be treated today. Initially, it will be all technical, but then today, if you see, cybersecurity is now a fully board responsibility. Nobody can shy away from it.
Yeah.
Same way, AI today might sound very technical. Tomorrow, it is going to become a full time responsibility of the board. So, a practical Indian board structure should actually look like you already have a risk committee. So,
Hmm.
AI enters the ERM framework, the enterprise risk management framework, and you list it as a model risk. And why model risk? Because wrong decisions will be at scale.
Hmm.
Once your model is deployed, it's going to make decisions left and right at faster speed. So, it is going to impact somebody at scale. Second, a lot of data risk is there. If you are not controlling the quality of the data, the biases in the data, the lineages, it is going to create the problems for you, and that too at scale. And lastly, the third party risks are always there. The vendors are there, what cloud model you are using, and all other things. If you see in the Indian context, again, RBI has given the model risk management guidance to the banks and NBFCs. It already requires that the oversight of the automated decision models should be there in the credit and the fraud systems, right? Now, what is happening is a lot of banks are now reporting the AI model risks along with the credit and market risks. That fine print that we see, that fine print is now including the AI as well. Now, if you see in the Chat GPT and all other LLMs as well, especially if you're using Copilot, it gives you a disclaimer that this is AI generated and you should make your own judgment before just using it in the emails. So that
Correct.
is what
Right.
the responsibility and the risks associated comes in, and then you have to be covered. Then the second part to this board structure is, besides the risk committee, is the audit committee. Now you have to look at the audit and the compliance as well. Now, what audit committee is going to do is it's going to focus on the explainability of the AI decisions, and it will provide the availability of the audit trails that can prove why the decisions were made and how they were made. And you need to have the internal controls around the automated decisions so that you have a full control of, this is what we wanted the system to do, this is the controls we have put in. So basically the guardrails around the AI, and that should be auditable and verifiable, so that audit committee will come into picture. Now, if you see in the Indian context, large IT services firms and the BFSI players who are subject to SEBI, LODR, and the statutory audits, they have now started the internal audits of their algorithm decision workflows. especially where AI is going to influence the prices, customer eligibility, and the risk scoring. Everything is becoming very dynamic nowadays. So each decision can impact your customers at scale. So all of these things have to be properly covered. So audit committee will come into that picture. Then comes the compliance part. Obviously, when you are talking about audit, the compliance comes. So and compliance is not only the statutory compliances, but also the around the ethics, especially the ethics oversight. Now, instead of putting a new committee that is going to focus on ethics oversight, it is recommended that you add the AI impact review as a additional standing agenda item into your board discussions, board agenda. And this is more so important when AI is going to touch the customers, citizens, or your employees. It becomes very, very important. In Indian context, DPDP Act 2023 is now in force, and under this DPDP Act, the automated decision making, especially using the personal data, is requiring a lot of compliance exposure. Even though there may not be an explicit AI regulation, but you have to comply with it. So these three things is what I recommend in the board structure. So the key point is no new silos are needed. You already have the structures. It's just an overlay. Same committees can be used. The only thing is you need to have a sharper lens now. You need to look at the AI, how it is influencing any of your functioning within the organization, or if it is going to affect the customers, how it is going to affect the customers.
Yeah, I got it. So you are saying it has to be an integral approach where you need to see it as a single board decision that has to happen, whether you bring a tool, whether you get it to audit, you bring the cybersecurity policies that are to be done for the models. Now, if you had to give boards a three question AI checklist before approving any AI rollout, and what could it be?
Okay. The most important thing is explainability. Now, can we explain this decision to a regulator or to a customer or to a court is the key thing I would say should be part of the checklist. Now, if the answer is model decided, the answer is certainly unacceptable, right? In Indian context, if you look at RBI, be it SEBI, be it IRDAI, they are expecting the explainability and not just the accuracy. So that is one key question should be the part of the checklist. Other is who is accountable when AI gets it wrong, right? It cannot be vendor, it cannot be algorithm, it has to be a human, and you will have to name that human who is accountable for that. Now, if accountability is unclear, certainly your governance has already failed. So that's the second key question I would say should be part of the checklist. And the third one is what happens at scale if this decision is biased or compromised? That is the third question that focuses on to the data quality. Now, AI errors don't fall locally, they fail exponentially, right? So if the impact analysis is missing, the rollout is certainly premature and it is going to give you trouble in the long run. And we have seen this globally, we have seen this in the Indian governance as well. If you look at OECD AI principles that we are adopting now, it talks about accountability, it talks about transparency, it talks about the human oversight. If you look at RBI's supervisory expectations, it has the expectations around the model governance. Again, the explainability and the auditability has to be there. If you look at the responsible AI framework that was recommended by Niti Aayog, again talks about safety, fairness, inclusivity, accountability, all of those things. Some of the standards like 23894, I mean the ISO 23894, ISO 432001, they're all around the AI and AI management. And again, it is talking about, AI, how AI has to be managed, how the assurance around the AI has to be given. If you look at the big four audit firms that are in India, they're also now offering the AI assurance services because it is becoming inevitable part of the board functioning. And anytime they see a board level concern, how it has to be signaled and all other things. Now, interestingly, these are not future trends. They're already influencing the board conversations. So I would say these three questions are very key to understand uh, how you can, take the accountability of the AI at the board level.
Sir, I think what you are saying is, if AI is not in the agenda, then I think we should look at it as been a registered risk, right? So that's what we are saying in whatever say, and you have named it yet. So what is the name that you want to give is your call, because now everybody is using AI, and without AI, there is nothing that the businesses are looking to make work more productive, mundane jobs going off and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah.
now how should the leaders look or think about bias and fairness when machines are making the life altering decisions?
Hmm. See, when leaders hear this word bias, they often think of a technical flaw. But I think that is the very fundamental mistake one can make. Bias is not just a data issue, it is actually a leadership issue with human consequences. Now, in India, we have seen this very clearly previously. If you remember the early days of Aadhaar enabled service delivery, um, multiple documented cases were shown, especially that involved the elderly people, the daily wage workers, especially in the rural areas. They were denied rations or the pensions just because their biometric authentication failed, right? Now, that algorithm was functioning as designed, but the design did not account for the human variability. What happened is the consequence was not just the technical inconvenience, but it was the denial of the basic rights. Imagine a old person in a rural area not getting the pension. How would he survive? And it's not his fault that the credentials are not matching. It may be a technical convenience on the part of the government, but again, it is impacting the basic rights of the citizens. So, when machines are deciding, leaders must start with one fundamental truth: every automated decision is a compressed human story. They have to realize this thing. That is the only way, the biasness and the fairness can be handled by the leaders.
What practical questions should CXOs ask to uncover hidden biases in data,
Mm,
models, and decision rules?
yeah, yeah, great question. Yeah, leaders tend to stay away from the technical questions. Um, but again, having said that, CXOs do not need to become the data scientists, but they must ask the uncomfortable and the leadership level questions. That's their job, right? So ask the question: who is missing from the data? Don't assume the data is covering all. That should be the first question. Now, in India, the data sets are often underrepresented. The women are underrepresented, the informal workers are underrepresented, rural population, vernacular language users, all are underrepresented. Now, if they are missing in the data, they will be invisible in the decisions, and it's not their fault. Other question that CXO should ask is: who benefits if the model is right, and who suffers if it is wrong, right? A false positive in a fraud system may be an inconvenience for a bank, but it's a disaster for a low income customer whose account is frozen. So some empathy has to be there. So somebody has to be accountable for all these false negatives. Then the next question is, they should ask, when this data was it created in a different social or a economic context? We train our models with a certain set of data, but again, the context is very, very important, especially credit scoring models. When they are trained on urban, salaried population, it is going to penalize the first generation entrepreneurs, the MSMEs. And it's a known issue in the Indian fintech lending. You check any of those fintech companies, they would acknowledge the models have been trained on the urban population, and it is certainly going to impact the um MSMEs and the entrepreneurs and all other things. One more question that CXO should ask is there a meaningful human override? And it's a very important question. Now, if an employee or a citizen or a customer cannot appeal against a AI decision, the system is not fair, regardless of accuracy, right? There has to be a mechanism of appealing against that decision. And obviously, a machine is not going to answer me, so somebody human has to answer. So there has to be a human override that will say, yes, this was correct, or this was correct. Some decision has to be taken by the human itself. Now these questions shift the conversation from model performance to the human impact. When you have empathy baked in and your questions are related to that, you can uncover all the hidden biases.
Sir, I think what you are saying is, you said the citizen denial service, a community can be impacted, right? So, and like it can be a reputational damage where saying that you brought a service but the service is not functioning, but actually if you really look, the function is the service is functioning but not with the right requirements that are there, right? And the customer is affected. This can be a reputational damage, this can be a regulatory risk also when it comes to services not provided, and maybe also hindering the long term growth on what the idea of bringing this system itself is, right? So that's what I think, what you're saying in the pointer. Now, what new cyber risks emerge when we let AI systems sense, detect and act on our behalf, right? So what is your
Mm,
take on it?
okay. See, when we are allowing the machines or specifically AI systems to, sense, decide, and act, the cybersecurity fundamentally shifts from protecting systems to protecting the decisions, right? Now, if you look at the traditional IT systems, what it is doing, it's mostly storing and processing the data, whereas AI system is learning from that data, reasoning it over time, and then triggering the actions automatically. Sometimes at a machine speed, sometimes without the human review as well. Now, this introduces some kind of new categories of cyber risk. One is manipulating what AI learns, or the data poisoning that we know of. Second is manipulating how AI is reasoning. This could be prompt injection, it could be adversarial inputs. And the third one is if somebody is stealing or copying how the AI is thinking. This could be through model theft, it could be model inversion. So once AI is compromised, the damage is not just a breach, it actually a systemic misdecision at scale. We have to realize this thing.
Yeah.
So those are the cyber risks, those are associated with AI.
So what you are saying in this one is, it can bring down the whole system because it does not understand what exactly is the impact that is there, but whatever is fed is what is getting done, is what I understand, right? Am I right in saying that?
I would rather say it would not bring the system down, but it can alter the decisions. Now,
Okay.
decisions can be altered by, poisoning the data itself. You had a good data, but somebody poisoned it. So now you have the biases unknowingly inherited into your data. And AI is going to learn from that data. Now it is going to make the biased decisions. Now, if decisions are biased, somebody is going to get affected, and that too at scale. And the third thing is, if somebody is going to change the model, replicate that model, or inverse that model, that is again going to impact at scale. So while cybersecurity solely focuses on protecting the systems, but in AI we have to protect the decisions. That's the key.
Now you said data poisoning, right? So data poisoning or a prompt injection is one thing that you can look at, right? And
Yeah.
now what? How do we look at these pointers like data poisoning, injection,
Mm,
or even the model theft that can change the cybersecurity agenda itself? Now, with that agenda getting changed, getting poisoned, how does it look at the board's level, sir? Could be the
mm,
challenge that we get into see when we understand this is done, and what would be the board's challenge to revive or relook or look at this situation?
mm. So one fundamental thing is, we should not see AI as a software, and certainly
Hmm.
boards should also not see it. They should see it as a critical decision infrastructure, right? Once you see this as a critical decision infrastructure, so certainly you will have the respective agenda into your board. How do I protect this infrastructure, right? So data poisoning is one, which is, in a simpler layman terms, I would say it is like corrupting the brain,
Hmm.
right? Now, if the attacker is poisoning the training data, the AI model learns incorrect and the biased behavior, right? No fault of the algorithm, but somebody did the poisoning of the data. Now, in Indian context, if you see, Indian banks and the fintechs, they are increasingly using AI for fraud detection and the credit scoring, right? RBI has warned this, especially around 23, 24. It issued a lot of advisories around the poor data governance and the third party data sets that can, distort the automated decision systems. So choosing the right data for training of your model is very, very important, and you have to ensure the data is not getting poisoned knowingly or unknowingly, right? Now, interestingly, the poisoned data doesn't trigger any alarm. It will produce confident but wrong decisions. It is board's responsibility to contain it. And this is not an IT issue. We have to realize it is a risk to lending, compliance, and the brand trust. Right. Next comes the prompt injection. In the layman terms, let's understand it like this: it is hijacking of the reasoning layer of AI. Now, what prompt injection is going to do is, it is going to manipulate the AI systems after the deployment, especially Gen AI tools that are connected to internal data and the workflows. Right? It can actually take away that reasoning and do a wrong reasoning around the right data. And there are so many proofs, not only in India but also globally. If you remember, in 2023, 24 time period, multiple researchers, demonstrated this prompt injection attacks on the LLMs, especially the LLM powered tools. And it forced them to leak the confidential data and override the safeguards. And it's well documented in Microsoft research. Also in OWASP top 10 for LLMs, it is one of the risks that has been listed there. If you look at India, now many Indian enterprises are now deploying Copilot, including my organization. And it is using the internal data, it is using the HR systems, it is using the customer data to help you do all of these things. But a single injected prompt can actually bypass the policy controls and can expose the sensitive data without breaching a firewall. So far, cybersecurity is focusing about outside threats going through your firewall and then doing something wrong. But these are the risks that come in within the organization. And it's important. It does not rely on any of the hardware, but it is all around how do you govern all those things. Third thing we spoke about was the model theft. Okay. Now, in the layman term, we can say it is like stealing the competitive advantage, right? Now, all AI models are intellectual property. If you have made a AI model, it is your intellectual property because you have trained it in a way to make certain decisions or help your employees or help your customers and do all those things. Now, researchers have shown the model extraction attacks, where APIs are queried repeatedly to reconstruct the proprietary models. This is one way of stealing the model. Now, this risk gets amplified when the Indian startups and the enterprises they are exposing the AI models via the public APIs, and if they don't have the right governance and the security around that, anyone can reconstruct their models by leveraging the APIs. In India, especially, if you see, we are building the sovereign AI, we are building the digital public infrastructure, and we
Right.
are building the sector specific models. Now, this model theft then becomes an economic and national competitiveness risk because you develop the model in the Indian context and somebody steals it, you lose your competitiveness. That
Yeah.
thing is already out. What it means for the board is it is certainly going to affect your valuation, it is certainly going to affect your differentiation, and it is certainly going to impact your long term growth, right? So these are the three things have to be taken care of while you're drafting your AI governance and AI policies.
Sir, if you had a 60-second with the CEO, and how would you want to explain the differences between securing IT and securing AI, sir? So these are two pointers, right? One is we've been securing IT for a very long time. Now securing AI is another pointer that we want to look at, right?
Yeah, so wonderful question. How do you secure AI and how it is different from securing the IT?
IT, yeah.
So, securing IT is all about protecting the systems and the data, as I said
Mm,
earlier.
mm,
And securing AI is about protecting the decisions.
mm.
Now, in IT security, if a server is hacked, you can restore it. But in AI security, if your model is manipulated, every decision it makes becomes a suspect,
Yeah.
be it credit approval, be it fraud alerts, be it hiring, pricing, any of the policy recommendation, everything becomes a suspect. Now, IT security protects what you have, but AI security is going to protect what you decide. And that's why AI security cannot sit only with the CISOs, I mean, the information security officers. It actually belongs to the CEO, it actually belongs to the board, and it is belonging to the ERMs, enterprise risk management. So that's what I would how I would explain this to CEO. I'm sure he will understand difference between securing a
I
system
think
versus securing the decisions.
no, what I think is show the AI expand attack surface, like how the data is trained, models, decision pipelines, tie that to a ransom or identity or a regulatory exposure, and similarly talk about how the models also can be poisoned in such a way that this can be another risk for us, is what I think one way we
Yeah,
can look at, right? And the CXOs definitely understand why AI security is no longer only the CISO's concern, because they are approving the tool, and it makes enterprise risk as a conversation, right? So it becomes a very detailed stuff, right? We can look at there was one discussion that we were having where if I am having a poisoning of data in the uh, grid side or the water supply side, and we try to do some changes, and if there is a add of a water treatment chemical which can be added to the water, that means the composition itself is going to change, and it may affect a lot of lives. So that's one case that we were reading somewhere, and I'm not sure how exactly that is going to be there, but they were saying when we start having everything automated, when you have the treatments automated, when the water purification is getting automated, where if you get such kind of water, this is the treatment that has to be cured, that can be looked at. Or the poisoning can be looked at there also, but that can be a catastrophe for us. So something like that was something, I'm not sure whether that is a real kind of this one. I heard it somewhere, but the facts have to be verified on that, sir. I'm not having a clarity on that. Now, coming to
Mm.
the next point that I want to understand, how can the leaders put AI driven growth without accumulating ethic and trust debt that can explode later? Because now doing everything faster, and we don't take the trust and the ethical considerations there. So how do you look at
Yeah.
that point, sir?
So when leaders are chasing the AI led growth, and especially without the ethics, they are not actually eliminating the risk. They are actually defending it, right? And deferred risk compounds like unpaid interest. And I call this as the ethical debt. Now it sits quietly on your balance sheet until it surfaces as regulatory penalties or the customer churn or the litigation or a irreversible brand damage. So it's just a matter of time. If you're not taking if you're not keeping ethics right at the start of the AI journey, it is going to hit you somewhere down the line. Now, in India, where the digital adoption is quite massive, ethical debt explodes faster. Any small mistake and it is going to become unmanageable. Now, true AI led growth is not about the speed alone, right? Why what startups are actually looking for is, but it is all about building the trust, which is quite fragile, and it can explode faster. So we are talking about the sustainable scale where customer lifetime value is preserved, the retention is preserved, NPS is preserved, and regulatory goodwill is preserved, and all of these things rise together, right? That sustainable scale has to be kept in mind. Now the leaders who are understanding this very well, they treat ethics not as a friction, but they see this as a growth multiplier, right? So unethical AI doesn't slow the growth, but it actually sabotages the future growth, right? So this is what I would say for the ethical thing has to be hand in hand with your AI decisions. You cannot do away with ethics.
Actually, you're right in saying that, sir. Now, we have another two questions to go, because we are running on top of the time. Uh, where do you see the biggest temptation for organizations to cut corners in AI, where when it comes to speed, transparency, or consent?
Hmm. Speed, transparency, and consent. So in India, speed is the biggest temptation, right? Because the market scale is enormous, competition is intense, and the regulatory enforcement is still evolving. So organization will what they will do, they will deploy the AI models before fully validating it, without validation of the training data quality, without validation around the biases around the socioeconomic segments, and without validating the explainability of the decisions, right? So let's understand this with an example. If you look at the facial recognition and the surveillance, many Indian startups and the public deployments, they faced criticism around this. They rolled out the facial recognition system without having the explicit consent, without having the right data retention policies, without having done the independent audits. So what happened is this led to the advisories and the interventions from the civil society groups. The scrutiny is now being undertaken under the DPDP Act. So, cost was not just compliance, it was actually the erosion of the public trust. Imagine an old person in the rural area and he's not getting the pension because of the facial recognition. not matching, right? And whose fault it is? Somebody wrote the algorithm around this, didn't test enough, didn't check for the socioeconomic thing, and the citizen gets impacted. So speed can win the pilots, but transparency will win the legitimacy. That is very, very important, especially in the public sector.
Got it, sir. Now I think what we are saying is India. We are trying to roll out many things at faster scale to get things done, and most of the pointers that we look at is everybody wants to go to the market immediately with whatever they have and then enhance the pointers that they take feedback and enhance. So that's one thing that I see when we look at speed, right? Now, what is the message to the growth obsessed founders who say we'll fix it with AI ethics and once we go into scale, right? So that's the point that few of the people who tell and say let's go on, let's fix with using AI at a later stage. What is your take on it, sir?
So, as I said, if you don't build the ethics into your AI when you're scaling, then you're not
Hmm.
scaling a product. You're actually scaling the liability that is
Okay.
going to hit you sometimes later, right? So, ethics, when you retrofit after the scale, is like adding the brakes after your car has hit the highway speed. Practically impossible, right? At that point, the investors will be worried, the regulators will start intervening, and the customers will simply silently leave your brand.
Yeah.
So you don't fix the AI ethics after scale, you pay actually for ignoring it. That's what I would say.
Sir, with this, I think we've come to the uh, end of our thought point because we are on top of the hour. I would like to take some takeaways which I wanted to give based on the 1 hour session that we have done. And the takeaways are here like this: machines can execute decisions, but they never can carry responsibility, because responsibility is the person who's building the system or the board or somebody who takes that permanently remains with the human firmly, and it is a leadership owned pointer is what I think what we want to look at as a takeaway. Then responsible AI is not a parallel project, it's an upgrade to how organizations govern technology, cybersecurity, strategy, and growth. That's the second pointer that I would like to give as a takeaway. Fairness, security, ethics are not compliance burdens, they are trust multipliers and strategic assets. Because you will have to build trust to build any system for the audience or the community, right? So that is where leaders must reskill. That's the first point. The second point, that is reframe governance and rewrite the culture, and that's the responsibility by design piece that we are looking at, that becomes by default not an exception that we can look at saying that it's not my responsibility anywhere we brought a system, it is not like that we should take. Now, taking that as AI moves deeper, the challenges you are thinking is going to be more at the CXO level, and are the policymakers who are wrestling with AI risk responsibility, right? So these are the pointers that they have to look at, bring them into the forefront, and build responsible systems with taking responsibility as a human as well while we build these systems. That's the pointer that I wanted to say. Now, with this episode, I wanted to tell to the audience saying that if you find this as an episode that you would like to share with some of the board room grade episodes that the global leaders should look at, or who are not just experimenting with the future, this is what we are talking about: accountability and responsibility of using AI. That's where we talk about when machines decide, leaders still own the consequences, is what we are saying as a topic that we've been discussing for the last 50 minutes. Sir, any final words that you want to say before we conclude, sir?
See, I would say, you know, the era has come where the AI awareness is no longer needed, but AI literacy is actually needed,
Yeah.
right? We have to move from compliance thinking to actually ethical reasoning. And this is what the board members have to really focus on. And also, you don't need to become the expert. That expert mindset is no longer needed, but a learning mindset is needed, because as the things are evolving, you have to comply with it, keeping empathy into mind, right? So those are the few things I would say, and I'm sure we'll become a AI hub soon, and we will, give new models, new way of working to the world using AI.
I think what you are saying is right. We'll become a AI hub because we, when we started using Google, we were never used to the search engine pointers at that time.
Yeah,
Now we are more looking at AI for everything. So that is going to be the hub that we will get in, is what I also agree to what you are saying, sir. With this, I think we are on top of the hour, and we would like to conclude the episode. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, the audience. This episode is streamed across LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Please do review, do follow us, and let us know your views on the episode on the comment section. So we will revert back to you, sir. Thank you for joining us, and good day, sir.
thank you.